Alrighty then. Transitioning over. Hello, lads, lasses, and NB badasses. Got my tablet here to watch the stream on the other over here, so to make sure in case something happens. This is actually really important for me because sometimes OBS decides not to broadcast for me or connect, or it will disconnect on its own. Also that means I have one other viewer, which is me and me. Anyway, so hello everyone's doing. Started. I actually had the work day as it were, so I only put in 9 hours of work today. Well, I could have actually leave the right time of 8 hours or something like that, but then also Tabby was streaming, so got caught up in watching Tabby stream. Then Highland. Hope your evening's going all right, going well. Everything's working. So, a while ago, I was just looking. I'll go ahead and I say this. In on the about 2 weeks time. Oh well, not this coming Monday, but the following Monday after this coming Monday, on the 22nd. I'm gonna be on Steve Shaw's YouTube channel. Um, yeah, that kind of did. Yeah, yeah. I'm home from work, and it's almost 9 p.m. my time in Pacific West Coast. Um, but in on the 22nd, I'm going to be on Steve Shive's YouTube channel to talk about anarchism. Now that I can already probably just go on and on for hours and talk about anarchism and stuff like that. But I also was looking for specific things, anarchist critiques of the state as well, because for me that was the final thing that make me an anarchist is oh, so that's why the anarchists are against the state. That makes sense now. I guess I'm an anarchist now, and I've been one ever since. So as I was looking for articles in the topic of the state, I found this one. I was like, ooh, the title of it already intrigued me. Crime and Punishment, a Anarchist View, with the subtitle being Whoever Pays the Piper calls to tune. And it's kind of yeah, that's exactly what it is. Didn't you have to highlight that because that's the author's name, and I have that in the title below. So yes, we're reading by Dermot Sharon. Apologize if I butchered the pronunciation. Crime and Punishment, an Anarchist View. Whoever pays the piper calls the tune. There's the sections that we're going to cover. And there will be one other very short essay as well that I'm going to read afterwards by Lucy Parson. Oh, that's right. But quick reminder, I'm again raising money for my friend Phoenix this time. The panel down below that has the information, something like that. Did that work? There you go. It did. Okay, good. Godbot is working. So she's not in. They're not in dire need for money, but it's kind of dude, it helps to give her a little bit of money for example. And don't worry, I'm gonna give her money when I get paid, or when finally we get those stimulus checks. They're supposed to be 2,000, yet they're only getting 1,400. And then also I get paid next Friday anyway. But to help coming along, any amount of money you can do, or you can share around her GoFundMe page or her PayPal pool. That can help out if you have the means of social media as well. And it's okay if you don't. And but yeah, but that's who I'm raising monies for. One of the couple of people that I always raise money for, and that's what I'm doing. But now let's read some anarcho-communist propaganda. And yes, I have my hot water leaf juice with me. It's green tea. So yes, now, Crime and Punishment, Anarchist View. Whoever pays the piper calls the tune. Let's check something. It should be in the thing. Yep. For when I do reading streams, I like for the window capture to capture the cursor so that people can read it along with me. Okay. Now we're going on. Justice is a great concept, but it has little place in capitalist society. Once you start to question this economic system, you find that so much of what we are told is lies. The very attributes which capitalists boast, law, order, and justice, are like props on a film set. The closer you examine them, the more hollow and fake they prove to be. In order to enforce justice, you first of all have to decide what's criminal. The French sociologist Emmerich Durant in 1890 wrote, "What confers a criminal character on a act is not the nature of the act, but the definition given in it by society. We do not report certain behavior because it's criminal. It's criminal because we reprove it. Reprove it. Reprove it. Sometimes I swear I can read, but if those who want to read along, I did update the reading command so that it will include these two essays that I'm going to be reading, and then afterwards gaming. Um, yeah, so now we're back to the essay and explaining what the statement is. In other words, what society deems a crime is a crime. Yeah, that's kind of like what it is. But when it gets kind of fussy, it's like, wait a minute, why is this a crime? And there are many examples of victimless crimes we can think of. But I won't get ahead of myself and continue to read the essay. I can bring up a lot of examples. But reading back to the essay, the people who always define what is and isn't criminal have been the ruling class. In pre-industrial Europe, crimes fell into two major categories: against the church, against the aristocracy. The rulers, those in power at the time, or the church and the aristocracy. Hearsay, sacrilege, and blasphemy were all punishable by death. It was a capital offense to pick fruit, hunt, or fish on the lands of the kings or the nobles. After the Industrial Revolution, the only thing that has changed was who decided what was or wasn't criminal. The new ruling class replaced the church and aristocracy as authorities of law. They moved the goalposts and set the laws to protect their own property. Property and wealth is, after all, what differentiates the ruling class from the working class. But side note here, so yeah, I'm gonna go off on a tangent on this because, yeah, the whole reason for there to be a state, as it were, which as anarchists define a state is like a institution that owns the monopoly on sanctioned violence. They have all the rights to be as violent as they want to, and they can get away with it with little or no accountability. And they need that sanctioned violence or the monopoly on violence in order to enforce private property laws, like trespassing laws. That's the only way for people to be able to. Hello, Jamie, how are you doing? Not much. I'm just reading, doing some political reading stream again. Is we're going on crime and punishment. When I was thinking of advertisements on Twitter, there was I searched for gifs of crime and punishment, and it was just oh, so this is from anime, and it's just yes. And yes, Jamie, we're talking about the crime and punishment that's in by the state, not the other kind of punishment, which is consensual. Now the problem is with the state, it's not always as consensual, of course. Which is why I didn't want to share or use that one gift to promote the stream on Twitter. That's where yeah, not the fun kind, exactly. That reminds me, I gotta get in the habit of doing this, and thank you so much. Thank you so much. No, Dude Snap just like it and retweet it. But another comrade liked the tweet too. Wait. Okay, copy the link and I'll put it into the chat. Yeah, and who consented to capitalism? Exactly. The stream is live. There is a tweet to promote it, and so there you go. Share it around to your friends and enemies and stuff like that. So this is what we're talking about now. Where was I before I got distracted? Yeah, ANCAPs would, or ANCRAPs would. It's just that's the thing. Because they're capitalists first, and then if they were allowed to, exactly, they're capitalists first, and then they claim to be anarchists first because they hate the state, or which they hate the taxes from the state, as it were. But in order to have private property, which are ANCAPs are in favor of, you need someone to be able to enforce private property laws to say, this is my land, you can't trespass it. Mm. Just green tea for those who are it just came in. Wondering what I'm drinking. Uh, and yet the handicaps think to like maybe they think that they will have their own personal like army as it were, or be able to like pay thugs or like hire guards and bouncers to be able to protect their private property as it were. But yet they don't. Yet they don't see the contradictions in like capitalism or in that arrangement already. And so, what makes them anarchists? I don't know. They're just like they like the aesthetics of it as it were. But that's but yeah, but that's exactly what like Dermont Sharon, who I'm not too familiar with his like writings or their writings, his writings. I'm assuming. Correct me if on the pronouns, and so I'm eager to like see how well it is. I'm liking it so far because it's basically kind of like yeah, it's the who makes the laws. It's like the ruling class, and were, and they always make the laws to benefit themselves, and so we even if we have like objections to the laws, either the process to change the laws are so cumbersome or antiquated, or it takes too fucking long for them to be changed that like it's near impossible for that to happen, or even if those things do successfully change, they're not equally enforced. Definitely, the punishment for the poor is different than punishment for the rich, if the rich do get punished at all. Mm. It's why the memes of like the guillotines and eat the rich. But on eat the rich, please remember food poisoning. No, maybe composting. That way we can use the rich for fertilizer. There won't be much compost though. But back to the essay. Victorian values still alive. The Victorians, those beloved moralists, decided to add a new dimension to how to deal with criminals: punishment. A idea as old as the Bible, was the way to ensure that lessons were learned. Huge institutions were built to house the mad and confine the criminal. They would be locked up and forgotten about. The ruling class would institutionalize those who did not conform to the norms set down by them. In the field of medicine, advancements have been made which led to a rejection of those primitive views. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said for the judicial system. We have Montjoy, Dublin, and Strange Ways, Manchester. Prisons still in use in the 1990s, even though they were built in the 1800s. Um, ooh. Oh, that's kind of cool. They were part of a local anarchist scene in the 1990s and the 2000s. Okay, so hey, I do. I will respect any like anarchists that also like those kind of like activists and local organizing as well as and something like that. Because I just listened to this in an old coffee with comrades podcast from years ago. Even the host like going on and on about like Marxist academics, and yes, they can be valuable things, but like if all they do is just like write essays and like articles for obscure like our academic article that few people are going to read, how's that going to materially change the world? This sort of thing. And yes, we're also going to be reading some stuff from like Lucy Parson, who's badass as hell. Yeah. Mm. But yeah, it's kind of like um person bolt. Oh, okay. Let's track what we're talking about then. And it's kind of interesting that like when you think of punishment and as old as the Bible, it says where yeah, my mom did went to school in the Catholic school system, and yes, the stereotypes of like the ruler against the knuckles is real. That's how she was born left-handed, but was forced to write with her right hand. Mm-hmm. Oh, Person Bolt. So the host of Coffee Comrades. Okay, yeah, they're cool. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Exactly. I've been enjoying Coffee with Comrades too. Anyway, but back to the essay. Paper versus Mary Jane. The law has changed with it in times, but still seems to be weighted towards protection of profit and property. Cannabis and marijuana were outlawed in the United States in 1937 after William Randolph Hearst led a campaign against them to protect his paper manufacturing industry. 5 years later, during World War II, the United States Department of Agriculture released a film called Hemp for Victory, which encouraged farmers to grow hemp for the greatest good of the war effort. Yeah. In the in the U.S., they have come up with a new definition for murder, which depends on who commits it. A boss who saves money by not providing safety equipment for his workers is responsible for what is termed a industrial death. This happens if a worker dies at his workplace due to a work-related task. This is not, excuse me, this is not a criminal offense. The American public are bombarded with the latest homicide statistics, but are not so well informed about how many industrial deaths occurred in North America each year. Side note: this also Tom McDonald, a co-host of Social Justice Alchemy, which Jamie Sightflight1 in the chat is also a co-host as well, has mentioned that sometimes for construction jobs, they measure how much it costs for a construction job to work on, not only in like man hours or and like costs for materials as well as the labor, but also in lives, because they just know that like in working a construction job in the olden days and probably still true today, but is like there's chances are of workplace accidents is like quite high, and so they do unfortunately like it's very bleak and morbid when you think about it, but they do kind of like measure things in lives, or because it happens so often. I did know about like I'm honestly not surprised about like the protecting his paper manufacturing industry. That's something that like and the comment over from Aaron Rooms everything's always points out is that like a lot of times we have the laws or the rules for things nowadays just because like the industry want to protect themselves. We had great public transportation systems in certain major cities, but then that was bad for the car industry because they're losing money. So then they gut those things, and or the protestants would freely walk the roads in like the turn of the century, the 1900s, real freely because it was almost like a common thing. But then they like forced the pedestrians to be on the sidewalks, and then the roads should be cleared for like the cars and all, and it made then kind of forces the whole country of America to be the car loving capitalist like country that it is. And it fucking sucks if you don't have a car, depending on which city you live. Especially if you're in rural places, you can't get anywhere if you don't have a car. And I can tell you, as I'm a person who chose not to like get their license, and I still never owned a car, and it's like I'm glad I don't, because like I'm too close to like the wire on like my bills and like credit cards because I give money to my comrades like Phoenix. And the expenses of like gas, insurance, and car maintenance on for owning a car is just would be, and car payments would be too much for me. Maybe it wouldn't, but it would mean I wouldn't be able to like give as much money to my comrades as I do. But anyway, I continuing and on with the essay, which yeah, kind of like points out that it's like yeah, the crimes are, the laws are written by the ruling class, so that they decide of like who's is fair game for punishment. It's usually the poor, but the continue on. It's not what you do, is who you are that counts. In the excellent pamphlet by a Bernard Peter McFerry entitled Spike Island, The Answer to What? He highlights a exemplary couple of cases. A low-paid worker stole a television worth £400. He was sentenced to a year in prison and lost his job. A property speculator bought land for £350,000. He later sold it for £2.5 million. His earnings amount to £21,500 per week for his search, and his search for profits added 400 to the cost to each home. £400 each cost to each home. Officially, no crime was committed. This example really brings home to us the fact that justice is only defined by what class you belong to. Working class, i.e. the low-paid workers, or the ruling class, i.e. the property speculators. So I don't know. Oh God, speculation. Again, the whole stock market thing. Yeah, there was the GameStop thing, and they're like hedge fund managers, and it's like, there's so much I don't know, but when they learn more about these sort of things, I'm just like, what the fuck? And it's just like how much money is like gambled freely on the stock market or in speculations on sort of things, or speculations on like fine art, or like speculations on like Bitcoin. It's just like, my God. And it's just like, if the resources you need to like create Bitcoin is where it's just like, again, what's the point of the stock market? I think, isn't the stock market from an anti-capitalist perspective just terrible, and thus like we should probably just like think about like getting rid of it? I mean, what's useful good that we have the stock market for? I bet the history of the stock market is also such really bad. But yeah, it's just like, and the thing about like also the well-paid workers stealing televisions, where can you really blame the well-paid worker, especially with like the society, the spectacle of like constantly bombarding with like get the latest and greatest like HD television. It's quattro. It streams. It's like it transmits the visual images in 4 colors. You put on the 3D glasses, it's like, wow, oh my. We we want those people, the advertisers want the people to be uninformed, and they want that. So is it any wonder that they steal it, especially since like when there's opportunity to steal it, they that's probably the only chance they can able to afford, since they're a well-paid worker and social mobility is like very terrible. It's very bad. Is the lower you are on the economic run of the ladders. And so yeah, and yet the property speculators do that sort of thing, flip houses as it were, all the time, and that's not considered a crime. What happens a lot on the stock market is not considered a crime. It's only when it starts affecting like the like actual rich people, like the hedge funds managers and this GameStop thing, do they like cry foul, oh, and say this is a war on the rich, and want to like legislators to like step in as it were. Not saying that the redditors on the GameStop thing are angels either. I think they're redditors. There's some good Reddit pages and a lot of bad Reddit pages. So it's like, I don't have like any fun and things and visions about like the GameStop thing. They are saying like, I want this brand to be alive, and it's GameStop. It's I have bought a lot of games at GameStop, a lot of used games at GameStop. It's like, I don't think GameStop is great. They had their stores open during the pandemic, and they claimed that like, well, we're essential because we sell keyboards. Anyway, so getting off topic, back to the essay. The state versus the working class. Ooh, we're getting to the juicy part now, or one of the juicy parts. Um, Last year, John Lurgan, the governor of Dublin's Monjoon prison, admitted that 50% of the prison population came from a few deprived areas of Dublin. 75% of the prisoners are under 30 years old, and 30 are under 21. 30% are under 21. The state, including all the various governments, have changed little in the last 30 years. Regularly, we read in the newspapers how the politicians are waging a war against crime. In all reality, they are simply preying on people's fears. The war is mainly being waged by police against the poorer working class areas. The police in larger towns and cities are viewed by some as the enemy. The police are waging the war against crime. The ruling class have defined the crimes. The police seek the criminals in the working class areas. They search seldom and takes is their searches seldom takes in the upper echelons of society. In cherry orchards, they send a in the riot plot. In Cherry Orchard, they send in the riot police when corruption is revealed in the beef industry. They had a tribunal and managed to find nobody guilty. I mean, Enron as well. That's another example. Just like so much corruption there that we are just now used to, essentially, and no one's like getting robbed or it gets spent in jail. The business plot against like FDR. None of those like rich billionaires, rich multimillionaires, spend a single day in court, as far as I know. Oh, and yet when workers were striking for the 8-hour day, and there was a bomb that was thrown at the Haymaker Market up there, or the massacre, um, 8 anarchists were found guilty. 7 of them were sentenced to death, and the 8th one was I think life imprisoned. So yeah, it kind of just shows where the priorities of the legal system is: punish the poor and let the rich do what they want, for the most part. Well, especially when it comes to economics and things, as where. Back to the essay. Who do the police protect? Childish notions that the police are there to protect and serve the community soon disappears upon experience. The primary purpose is to serve and protect the state and its ruling class. Their use over many years to smash picket lines during strikes illustrates that point. Capitalism continues to open the chasm between rich and poor. The poorer people who get, the less facilities are provided for them. The councils and governments ignore the problems, hoping that nothing would happen or blow up before the end of their terms in office. The police are often the only representatives of authority in these places. They are there to keep a lid on the growing disconnect. Last year, over 900 complaints were dealt with by the Granada Complaints Commission. This resulted in just 3 suspensions from the force. Justice for the police appears more lenient. The state prefers not to punish its foot soldiers. It does not want demoralization among men and women who do their bit for a class system by dealing with those who will not conform. The sin of property we do disdain. No man has any right to buy and sell the earth for privileged gains. By theft and murder they took the land. Now everywhere the walls sprung up at their command. The world's turned upside down. And that's the end of Crime and Punishment, an anarchist view by de Montserrat. And yeah, and also this is I think a key thing is like the politicians, elected officials, the majority of them, all they care about is staying in office and staying elected in the next election. That's really all they care about. I think you can see that evidently with like Joe Biden walking back a lot of his promises, like halting deportations. But once one Trump appointed judge blocked Biden's executive order, and it's like, no, Biden, you had to fight to like commit to your promise and no halt deportations. As soon as one obstacle comes up, Biden's like, no, let's let that happen, and he's reopened some of the concentration camps too. We still have them, and we still have children in cages in those places too. And he also promised in Georgia during that special election that like $2,000 checks will be coming any soon. And then it's just like, well, hey, you already got 600, so let's make it just 1,400. Make it cheaper on the government. And the $1.9 trillion spending bill relief package. It was passed and Biden signed it. So finally we're going to get at least $1,400. But it's just like, when you promise us $2,000, when we desperately need any money we can get for relief, we want those $2,000. I know this sounds petty that we're swapping over $600 difference when there's more serious things that we can ask for. But are we going to get any of those other serious things? Biden at least said $2,000 checks are coming in the mail. And I was walking back on that and walking back on all those other things. But another thing is in this kind of thing about the chasm between rich and poor and the elected officials don't do anything is where and represent is that and the police being the only representatives and authority in these places is where the poorer areas. Something that was said by the author of The End of Policing on the podcast by my friend Corey Johnson, The Mind of Skeptical Leftists. Basically, a lot of the local elected officials, city councils, county members, and even state officers or state lawmakers, they just gave up on fixing the homeless problem. Because honestly, in order to fix it, it's to house people, and they don't want to do that because their real estate donors don't want that. Poor people don't make good tenants because they don't have a lot of money to pay in rents, and so you want to keep those properties empty for speculation and for those big high ticket personnel to come in and buy them, rent them for profits. giving those home houses to like homeless people who need homes, especially during a pandemic, um, doesn't make them profits. And so the local officials, they don't want to do that at all. It takes a lot of political will to do that, and it'll be fight every single chance to just house people as we're. I can tell, say from experience here in the Seattle area. Mm, it's so local officials have just given up on trying to fix the homeless problem. So all they do is police it. And so that's why they will just send the police to fix the problem, and hence the over policing. Um, and so they just have the police around in order to like keep the rabble to like a minimum, so that like the all of the like poor people don't revolt us were when I think they have every right to, especially since in this pandemic the poor are getting poorer with 60 million unemployed, and only like one $1,200 check and another $600 check and now a $1,400 check and unemployment relief, but yet no cancellation of rent, just a moratorium on evictions, but evictions still happen. And where am I going to? It's like and it's there. Everyone has a right to revolt, and right now, and the rich are getting richer. Yeah, that's the thing. The billionaires who were already billionaires during before this pandemic just got richer during this pandemic. Probably a lot had to do with that first COVID bill that it passed with a huge lot of slush fund that like the lawmakers like gave them. So, but I can go on. But anyway, so quickly, I'm going to change some things a little bit. I'll keep the content. Actually, I don't think I'll actually need content warnings or that. But the title changed a little bit because this is going to be by a Lucy E. Parson, who's badass as hell. I need to read more about her. And the title is... It's also going to be a quick one. And then after this, I'm going to take a break and then switch over to gaming. And just a few straight observations by Lucy Parsons. Yes, okay, there we go. So now, Lucy E. Parsons. Just a few straight observations on political socialism, war, and the state. Scientific socialism, so-called, has been taught in Germany for more than 50 years. The state scientists abjured the tenet, Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost, but took it in instead the text, workers of all countries unite. This beautiful bit of phraseology. This beautiful bit of phraseology was gleaming when the political representatives of science, backed by more than 4 million voters, helped their imperial master lay a war levy of a billion marks or more on the prosecution of a war on workers in other countries. Each of the scientists were honored by a clasp of the imperial hand to the tune of Deutschland über alles. German scientific socialism has stifled the revolution tendency once so promised. Can governmentalisms ever reach the limit in the matter of invasion? If so, this must be the limit. It seems that the Chicago women who apply for municipal employment are subjected to a physical examination as their chastity, the results of these inquisitions being duly recorded by the attending clerk. The Chicago Herald made editorial comment as follows. Civil servant indignities. The indignities to which young women seeking positions as nurse in the schools and at the municipal tuberculosis sanatoriums were subject deserve condemnation in the highest degree. According to the civic laws, even a person accused of crime is presumed to be innocent until proven guilty. The burden of proof is on the prosecution. The accused is not required to establish his innocence. The nurse subject to the physical examination prescribed by the civil servants commissions, medical examiners were called on to prove their innocence. The suggestion of such a examination was degrading. Its infliction was a gross insult. Could wars ever be carried on were it not for the institutionalization credulity which manifests its reliance upon the state? Our socialist friends often say, "We see anarchism getting you nowhere." Where did scientific political socialism get the millions of socialists in Europe? Frankly, could Europe be worse cursed than it is if there has never been a single speech delivered by a political socialist or a book written by one of them? Really? Could be worse? And that was in September 1915. So basically, after like World War One just started. So yeah, I think that is kind of it's similar to like Erica Tesla's essay of like a pro-government anarchist, and where it's just like, well, that one was more against like the anarchists of saying, listen, let's support the governments as we're while we fight this world war. Here, Lucy Parson is just kind of like, really scientific socialism. You think you're like better than that? Look what it got at you, and because it's not looking great in Europe right now. World War One is happening. And Erica Matesla is more like going against like the anarchists who were trying to like say, "Hey, come on, we need to support the government as a war." And when Erica Matesla is like, "Yeah, are the governments going to support you afterwards?" Really? Yeah. I thought it was interesting. How's everyone doing? Well, so that I only chose out those like two essays. I could like look for other essays, but I think I'm just like I don't want to talk too much and as well, so I think I'm going to go into the Be Right Back screen. And hold on, that's something I'm going to change in the Be Right Back screen a little bit. Doing things live on stream. We're gonna just take a short self-care break to like be able to like top off our drinks. I may get another cup of tea, and so I'm gonna do that during the break. Chance to get up and stretch and like take your meds if you need to, since it's like late at night for a lot of people. Get some snacks if you're peckish as well. And then I'm gonna switch over to like gaming, so I'm gonna go transition over to Be Right Back screen. Run a 60-second ad break, and I will start playing some Stardew Valley when I come back, and I'll be right back.